My name is Colin Stevens Lucas. My name will soon legally be changed for reasons alluded to in this video. Growing up, my grandparents have raised me to follow the rules. I was encouraged I could be anything I wanted in the workforce, and if I did my job well and followed orders, I would succeed. If a stranger or a family member said something crude, I should hold my tongue, be respectful, and do not cause drama. If an officer pulled me aside on the side of the road, I should cooperate with their instructions. After all, if I have nothing to hide, I have no reason to worry. And always respect my elders. From my birth year in 1993 up to around 2012, these guidelines worked for me more than they didn't, at least to my knowledge. I graduated high school, got certificates for the IT field, and worked for numerous employers in the next 7 to 8 years. Sure, there was one employer who defended an employee I caught hijacking my Amazon account, and a state position who forged my signature and still hasn't given me my full paycheck. But I carried on, optimistic that I could live a healthy life, pursuing connections elsewhere. Until March 2020, when my family finally gave me their approval to move out for the first time to room with a friend 1,600 miles east. I finally became aware of how the world really worked, as the COVID-19 lockdown happened 2 days after my arrival in that state. I also realized how my appearance is often perceived in one of two ways: an intimidating psychopath or an easy target. I'm going to skip over my various discoveries of frauds, bills, and false loans committed against me since 2014 and focus on one matter alone. One that may permanently derail my life should I never be heard. After my initial move failed, I was invited back to the family home by my family. It was becoming more and more apparent that today's world was wildly different than in the past, as 99% of IT jobs were work from home due to the pandemic. It was imperative that I found an apartment to myself to not only relieve stress from previous events, but also so I can get a job in my field again. After other interviewers passed me over for either being too old or too inexperienced, I finally had a great interview with Charles Schwab through a contractor of mine, the Judge Group. I was in the final running for the first sweep of hires, but I didn't make the final cut. A couple months later, I was called back and confirmed I was hired in the second sweep, and my job would begin January 4th, 2021. However, living in the family home wouldn't work for this. In order to fulfill Schwab's contractual requirement for a quiet environment with a direct high-speed internet connection, I needed to move before the job began. No later than December 15th, I toured, applied, and was approved for a third-story apartment and was scheduled to move in December 31st, 2020, New Year's Eve. I immediately began making all necessary calls and preparations to ensure the move transitioned as smooth as possible. Schwab agreed to send me physical equipment in order to perform my daily duties before my start date, and CenturyLink could not send a technician to connect the lines as the earliest one was only available on January 4th, 2021. I had planned to work from my grandparents' house that day while a friend of mine was placed in charge of the apartment for that day alone in accordance with my apartment lobby's recommendation. This friend wishes to remain anonymous and will not appear in this video. However, when January 4th came, Schwab's equipment had not yet arrived, as UPS has delayed the shipment by 24 hours. I waited at my grandparents' house for the package until it arrived at 7:02 p.m. that evening. Schwab agreed to compensate me for that day, as my inability to work was agreed to not be my fault. After returning to my apartment and driving my friend to his, CenturyLink's customer support confirmed to me that the lines were successfully connected, but the modem's delivery was also delayed by UPS, again by 24 hours. When it arrived, I discovered none of the phone jacks in my apartment carried a DSL signal to the modem. Within compliance to Schwab's own written policy, I called the absence line at 5 a.m. on January 6, 2021 to take 1 out of 3 of my allotted 90-day absences so I could wait for a CenturyLink technician to come out and fix the internet. Internet connectivity was successfully achieved by the end of the day. Over the next 2 days, January 7th and January 8th, Training continued as normal with minimal technical issues, and I was even praised by my trainer several times for understanding concept he stated most other new hires had difficulty grasping. After January 8th's shift, I settled in bed for a well-deserved weekend's rest, grateful of the opportunity I've received, and looking forward to continuing my employment with Schwab the next week. Until I received a call from my contractor. My contractor informed me that the manager decided to terminate my contract as he had heard I told a coworker I am unable to work chat. What I'd actually said was asking for advice on how to properly word my responses on the chat as to not accidentally offend others due to my diagnosed autism, more specifically Asperger's. As the entire duration of my training was handled over Microsoft Teams and WebEx, logs of these chats can likely be recovered from the owners of these platforms. Should my 24/7 surveillance audio recordings on my second phone not be sufficient, as my entire workday was performed with headphones plugged into the Schwab computer, my personal recordings have recorded my end of the conversation only and are not in violation of any privacy laws as the other parties cannot be heard. I believe that Schwab's termination of my employment is not only disability discrimination, but violates other federal and state laws, as well as their own written contract. I've retained all emailed documents since their delivery and have thrown out minimal physical records, as I have learned from prior situations how to protect myself should I again fall victim to dishonest practices in the future. I fully intend to fight back on this termination, as not only have I spent over $1,700 in credit in order to comply by Schwab's own contract for becoming an employee, but as I signed a 12-month apartment lease in the process, and my first week only earned me roughly $800, the losses from this debacle are beyond unacceptable, and has put my likelihood for a normal life in jeopardy. I want to be clear that this is more than just the money. This is about principle. I am not willing to settle for any deal that leaves me unable to publicly talk about this event. I care more about doing the right thing and exposing corruption within the workplace. I may not be a likable person to many, but it is not on me to appear sympathetic. It is on Charles Schwab to prove that their allegations related to my termination actually happened. Ask yourself not who is charismatic, but who is breaking the law. My name has been Colin Stevens Lucas, and I am being punished for following the rules. If this video is seen, please share it with as many people as you can. Thank you.